Today's paella is so good. It's full of delicious bomba rice. It has all kinds of mushrooms. It's got peas. It has green beans and kale and the most delicious seasoning. For a special occasion, family dinner, anything, paella is a wonderful dish, and I even topped it with some Spanish-style tofu crumbles. And they have some smoked paprika and saffron seasoning in them, and they're just a great topping for the paella. So we're going to make this, and I think you're really going to love it. Okay, so I'm going to make paella, and paella just means the pan is the paella. And we're going to make our food in the pan that we can serve it in. We could set this on the table, and you saw the one that I took my bites from. That was so delicious. But we're going to use a smaller pan. This is like a 15-inch paella pan. And then this one is a 12-inch. This one is good for making twice as much as what I'm going to make for you today. But let's say you had a big group coming over and you wanted to make a lot. You could make a couple pans this size. I have about 4 of these different size paella pans because I've had a party where everybody came over and ate paella. But what's also nice is we can make a small amount. We can use just 1 cup of rice and make a small amount for a normal size serving, just for a couple of people, and that's what we're going to do right now. I'm going to start with my mushrooms, and these are some interesting mushrooms. These are king trumpet mushrooms, and when you see them in the store, know that the bottoms are very hard, and you have to cut the bottoms off because they're not edible. And then tops are edible, the rest of them are edible. They're kind of pricey. They tend to cost about $27 a pound or something, but they taste very good. They have a very mild taste, but kind of a complex taste, and the texture of them is really great. People say they're kind of meaty texture, but you can kind of see they don't break apart. They tend to have some body to them. So what I'm doing with these is I'm going to take all my mushrooms and chop them up. So first I'm slicing the king trumpet mushrooms, and then I'm also going to use shiitake mushrooms. This is 8 ounces of mushrooms. With those, I cut the stems off. And then I have about 3 cremini mushrooms. And you can keep the stems on. Just cut the very bottoms of the stems off because they tend to be a little leathery. So these are all my mushrooms. Now I've sliced these. I'm going to chop them up. I'm going to chop the king trumpet mushrooms up, but I think I'm going to keep the other ones sliced because they'll look better in the pan. Speaking of pan, I can see my pan's getting a little hot over here, so I'm going to move it until I'm ready to start putting stuff in it. These carbon steel pans are very thin, so you have to kind of be careful with them. You don't want to overdo it. Okay, and then we're going to get all these in the pan. It wasn't that hot, but it looked like it was getting hot, so I'm going to get it over here to my burner. I got the burner on kind of medium-high, and then I'm going to just let this cook for about 10 minutes. And what I like to do with the mushrooms, especially in this pan, because it's not like a non-stick hex-clad pan that I use all the time, is I'm going to help it out by giving it a little bit of my broth. So that's probably a couple of tablespoons. And that will kind of help it out since we're not using oil. Throwing that broth in there will help it out a little bit. But I'm going to let these mushrooms cook for about 10 minutes and then add them to the plate and set them aside while I do the next part. So while the mushrooms are cooking, I'm going to get some of my other vegetables ready to go. I have an onion. I need about ½ cup of onion, 3 cloves of garlic. I'm going to use about half of a jalapeno. Jalapeno is not a Spanish ingredient, but I live in Texas, and I love stuff to have a little spice to it. So that's my decision to add that little half of a jalapeno. I won't add all the seeds in the membrane, so it won't get too crazy, but that's just how I like it. So I'm going to be adding first the onions, and then the garlic, and then the red peppers. All right, so you want your mushrooms to be nice and cooked down. which they are, then I'm just going to take my same pan and add my mushrooms off the edge. I'm going to add these onions and garlic and the jalapeno. First I'll let the onions cook for like 5 minutes before I add the other stuff. So again, back to medium-high heat, cook the onions for about 5 minutes, and then I'll add the garlic. All right, so for the bell pepper, I'm just going to kind of cut the sides off. Makes it a lot easier to deal with. And then I cut out any of this part to make it flat. And then I'm going to turn them into matchstick pieces. Once I have all these cut, when the onions are done and the garlic and the jalapenos are done here in a couple minutes, I'm going to add these peppers to the pan and just cook them for a couple of minutes. Got my bell peppers ready. And get those in. Let them cook about 5 minutes with the onions, garlic, and that little bit of jalapeno. And I'm going to turn the heat up a tiny bit. So now I'm going to cut up the tomato. And for the tomato, what I like to do is I like to cut around the outside of the tomato because I don't want to have all the seeds in there. So I just kind of cut the outside part of the tomato, and then it kind of leaves all the seeds behind, which I'm okay with. And then I'm just going to cut each of these pieces into strips and then cut them into little chopped pieces. Okay, I'm going to add in the tomatoes, turn the heat up a little bit. Then I'm going to be adding ½ teaspoon of smoked Spanish paprika. And then I've got some saffron, about ½ teaspoon. A couple of sprigs of thyme. I'm just going to take the leaves off the thyme. This is very fresh, young thyme, so the stems are not very hard, but still you don't ever want to put thyme stems in your food because they can be a little woody. And then about ½ cup of my vegetable stock. And then I need to let this cook down for about 5 minutes before I add the bomba rice. Okay, I'm adding my 7 ounces. It's just about 1 cup of the bomba rice. And I'm going to let it, I've turned the heat on the pan up a little bit to toast the rice. That makes it taste even better. And on the rice to use, if you can get bomba rice, that's really the best rice to use for paella. It is kind of pricey, but there's a reason. It's a special Spanish rice, and it tends to hold 3 times the amount of liquid in the rice. So it really absorbs liquid stock. It plumps up, but it doesn't get soft. So what happens is you have your paella, and it has a really nice texture to it. It doesn't get soggy at all. So that's why people use that special kind of bomba rice. So now as soon as this is toasted, we'll go on to the next step. I'll give it another maybe 2 more minutes. All right, so now we get the mushrooms back in. And then I'm going to spread them around a little bit because once I add the stock, I don't want to disturb it. So I'm going to mix the mushrooms in pretty well so they're distributed evenly. And then I'm going to add the rest of my stock. And now I just need to let it cook undisturbed for about 15 minutes. I'm going to flatten it down. I'm going to let it simmer and kind of at medium-low heat. And at some point, after about 5 minutes, I might cover it because I found cooking it uncovered, it took a lot longer. And it didn't hurt it to cover it for about 7 or 8 minutes in this process. But I'm not going to mix it. I'm just going to cover it briefly for about 7 to 8 minutes. And then when that time passes about 15 minutes, I'll stir it very, very lightly, and we'll see where it's at. I like to add about a tablespoon of tahini, and that has seemed to add a little bit of the richness since I'm not using olive oil. That did add a little bit more flavor. Now we're going to let it cook for its 15 minutes. Okay, it's been 15 minutes. I'm just going to gently stir it. It's not sticking to the bottom, thank goodness. It's not burning. And it doesn't really develop much of a crust like it does if you have a lot of olive oil in it. So we can't really go for that, but it gets a little tiny bit brown. But there's what we want to do. And then I'm going to let it cook for like maybe 3 more minutes before I add the peas and the green beans and the kale. All right, so I've got some vegetables. I have some blanched green beans. I blanched them for about 4 minutes, and then I put them in ice water, and I'm going to throw those in. I don't have to worry about them cooking. I've got a 1/2 cup of defrosted, maybe it's more like 1/4 cup of defrosted peas. I just took them out of the freezer, defrosted them, and I have about 1 cup of curly kale that I've chopped up kind of small so there's no giant pieces. And then I'm just going to stir that in, turn the heat off. It's fully cooked. My pot holder here. So I've got the mushrooms, the bell peppers, the peas, the kale, the green beans, onions, lots of garlic, tomatoes, fresh tomatoes, saffron. Just so many good flavors in here. And that's what you get out of this dish, is it's full of really good spices and vegetables, and it doesn't really need anything else. And this kale and everything else will just continue cooking. And so the final touch that we add to this is we add a little bit of lemon, and I'm just going to lay the lemon on the top, and then when people get their serving, they can have a slice of lemon with it. And I'll just kind of put them around the edge. And last but not least, I have this beautiful Spanish style tofu crumbles. So I marinated the tofu in some Spanish spicy or smoked paprika, a little tamari, and some other ingredients, garlic and onion powder, a little tahini, and they taste amazing. And so I'm going to put that on top. And then I have some fresh parsley. And that's it. So really, the reason I put the tofu on the top is because if you mix the tofu in, it will get real soggy. But right now it's crispy. So it has a really good texture. So that's why I like it like that. So there you go. That is the delicious paella, perfectly cooked bomba rice. Lots of vegetables. You can taste the saffron. Everything about it is delicious, and what a great dish to serve at your get-together with friends. You can make, remember I showed you the giant paella pan, you can make a huge one, you can make a small one. Just make this, you'll really love it. And I hope you subscribe to my channel, watch my videos. I have so many videos on this YouTube channel, and watch me on other social media, and I have a lot of classes on my website, chef-julia.com. So thanks for watching.